Hi team, this is going to be just a short video as I was requested to do, just to show you how you might whiteboard. Now I want you to see that my whiteboarding is pretty bad, my drawings are pretty bad, but just giving you an example of the kinds of things you might do. So I've actually got a giant whiteboard here. What I've done here is I've drawn a thorax, not very good, but the kind of things that I might want to label on here, which I've labelled here. The first one I've labelled TI. I want you to notice that I labelled TI. I didn't write thoracic inlet. I made it shorter. The more you can shorten things, the more you can simplify them, the more likely they're going to stick in your head. So I've written TI as a way of making me remember, what does TI mean? It means thoracic inlet. Same down here. What does TO mean? It means thoracic outlet. So that's the kind of thing I could draw. Now, the other kind of thing that you could do on here, and my drawing is bad, so let me just add in the costal cartilages here. So I've got some costal cartilages, some ribs, and you see my diagram's bad, so it doesn't matter, you don't need to be great at drawing. So they're my costal cartilages. So now let's label some of these joints. That might be a good thing to do. So if I wanted to, for example, label this joint here, between the costal cartilage and the rib, I'm going to call that, what am I going to call that? CC joint. What does CC mean? Costochondral joint, okay? If I want to label these down here between one cartilage and another cartilage, I'm going to label these IC, interchondral joints, okay? So I'm just showing you how something as simple as this, you can make it even simpler on a whiteboard as a way of helping you to remember things. Now let me think what other things we did this week. So that's not bad just for the thoracic cage. Now the thing I wanted to show you over here, and this is just to show you that you actually don't need a whiteboard to do this, and this may not look great, but I want to show you. I've drawn this, I don't know if you can see this, I've drawn this on the glass on my veranda. So I've actually drawn a sternum in here. Bit hard to see because of the reflection. But what I want to show you with something as simple as this, I could just draw it anywhere. And what I've done is I've drawn a sternum, and I'm going to label in here. This joint here is going to be manubriosternal. So I've labeled it MS, okay? This little joint down here between the xiphoid, and it is hard to see, I'm seeing that with the reflection. This one down here, xiphisternal, so excess. So use things like that. You might want to label this. This, we'll just call it M for manubrium, yeah? This one we'll call B for body, X for xiphoid process. So there's lots of little things like that that you can do. Now, the other thing I was going to say that you might want to do, and this is just an example, and I'll just see if I can get this set up again here, pointing in the right direction, pointing at my whiteboard. Okay, so let's draw, and you'll all remember this because it was such a bad bit of art. Let's draw our box again, our rectangle. Okay, so here's our rectangle. Okay, that's our thoracic cage. This is your head. Okay, so just put into perspective, it's a living person. So this is a good way that you might want to practice understanding what the muscles do and how breathing actually occurs. So in this diagram that we did do in the tutorial, you could draw in things like, I draw in the direction of movement. So vertical, you've got this direction, which we said is transverse. And then you've got this direction, which we said is anteroposterior. Now what I'd add into that is what muscles are doing this. So we know from what we've done before, vertical, the vertical diameter is basically all diaphragm. So this is all diaphragm, yep. So vertical diameter is moving because of the diaphragm. And then when these other ones move out, so if you've got a forced inhalation, and the diaphragm is only working during inhalation, okay, remember that. So during a forced inhalation, not only is the diaphragm working, but the other diameters are also going to move because of one muscle. And what is that muscle? Do you remember? EE, external intercostal, external intercostal, sorry, EI. Okay, so that's an example of what you might do. Now in the other direction, if you were actually having a forced exhalation, so you're breathing out, your diaphragm's not working, it's relaxing. external intercostals aren't working. They're relaxing as well. The only ones working, so if you're actually doing it the other way, so you're coming in, so I'm trying to explain that. It's a bit hard to explain. The only ones you'd be using would be the internal intercostals. So that's just another example of what you might do on a whiteboard. I think the secret to using a whiteboard is to make it really simple. So if you do put a diagram, the other thing you can do are flowcharts. They're really good too. But if you're putting something up, rather than writing out all the words, actually put in just the abbreviations. So put in, you know, IC, CC, because that's just another little thing that helps to jog your memory, okay? So that's the kind of thing I was doing. Now let me show you an example of a flowchart. I'll have to think of what we could do here, but flowcharts are good too. So you don't always have to draw, and if you see me, you know, my drawing's pretty bad, but the only person that needs to understand your drawings is you, so that's the positive thing. If we were going to do a flowchart, and I'm just trying to think what we could do a flowchart about for what we've done this week. There's so many things you could do a flowchart for, really. I'll just give you an example. So I'll just say thorax. This week we've studied the thorax. What did we study in the thorax? We studied different bones, didn't we? We studied the sternum, and probably I should just write S, shouldn't I? We studied the ribs. We studied the costal cartilages. And then you might want to go on and maybe, for example, and this is just an example of what you might do, you might say, okay, sternum has 2 joints, manubriosternal, xiphisternal. The ribs and costal cartilages are going to have a few joints, aren't they? So you're going to have we could have the sternocostal joints, we could have the here we could have the intercostal joints, and here we could have the costochondral joints. So this is just another example of something that you might think of. Now that's just something I've come up with that might not necessarily be right. You might find with the larynx is something you can do a bit more. So look, I haven't done much here, but I just kind of wanted to give you an idea of what you could do with a whiteboard. So diagrams are good, flow charts are good, but whatever you do, make it really simple. That's the point, okay? And like I said, you know, if you get a chance and you can, you know, actually draw on other items in your house, so you don't need a whiteboard, draw on glass, draw on your mirrors in your bathroom, anywhere, then that would be useful too, okay? So I'll leave it there. Thanks, guys.